Everyone's coping with something but won't admit it. They're all too afraid.
How are you doing, guys? Welcome back to the channel as always. Today is a more sensitive subject. It's obviously Mental Health Week, and I don't think there is anyone in the world right now that isn't affected by mental health. If you're not affected yourself, you would absolutely invariably know someone that is. I don't really know anyone in my close circle that isn't directly affected by it, whether that's themselves or someone that they live with, they love, is one of their family. And yet we don't talk about it still. I'm saying this as someone making a video who very rarely talks about it to people myself, and I would class myself as very, very open. And yet it's easier to talk to a camera in my own house than it is to another person, and I think that for me gives some kind of perspective as to the difficulty that there is around mental health and well-being. And in my family there's been problems with mental health, issues with it. I've had my own of certain types. I've never experienced things like depression, but I went through some pretty traumatic stuff earlier on in life and suffer from, or been told I've suffered from PTSD. But we've all been through stuff and we don't talk about it, and I think we should, because some will judge. We shouldn't, but some will, but most won't. The ones that love you, the good ones, the people that you want in your life, not only will they not judge you, they'll hug you, they'll respect you, they'll admire you for talking about it, because at some point we're all going to go through it, whether it's us or a person we love, we're going to be touched by it. So I thought, rather than talk about how to make your business great or me opening a shop or all of those things, none of that matters. And I think the current climate that we live in has brought perspective on that, and I think Mental Health Week probably has never been more relevant. As a society, maybe we are trying to talk about it. We're not great at it, and we're certainly not great at creating the services for people that need it. But I think we're all aware that not only are we at risk from the coronavirus or COVID right now, actually a big danger is people's mental health. People are starting to get restless, they want to get out, they're lonely, they feel isolated, they feel abandoned, lonely, hopeless. Lots of really sad words, and I won't profess in this video that I'm going to say something hugely profound or more profound than something you've heard before, but this is my way of doing my little bit.
I wake up, puddle of sweat. I have nightmares and I get back into bed. It's like these voices just keep playing on repeat in the back of my head, and I can't get them to leave me alone. 30 years old, but still hates being alone when I'm home, because that's when the voices get the loudest. Opening up like this is a moment far from my proudest, but these demons keep pressing me, I swear they're the foulest. But I've grown comfortable with their presence, my conscience is calloused. My dreams are their playground, my thoughts are their palace. I try to evict them, they return with more. Anxiety isn't an item you can return at the store. I was 10 the first time I had a panic attack. Like a punch to the stomach, there's no planning for that.
So, what does Dwayne Johnson, Katy Perry, Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, first and second men on the moon, Lionel Messi, Alistair Campbell, Isaac Newton, Lady Gaga, J.K. Rowling, Bruce Springsteen, what do they all have in common? They suffered with mental health conditions. I use those people not because they're famous, they're names that you might recognise, and they cover a multitude of industries, and they were the best of the best in their industries. They still are. Most of those people are alive, not all of them are. But mental health. Buzz Aldrin, famous for getting on the old spaceship with Neil Armstrong, who was the second man on the moon, he actually became the chairman of the National Mental Health Association. Someone that brilliant, part of something that was so transformational for society, still suffered with mental health. It's not about being weak, it's not about being strong. If somebody said they had cancer or multiple sclerosis or Crohn's disease, you don't judge them. They're not weak. But when it comes to mental health, which is invariably out of your control, sometimes there are situations and scenarios where you can create that for yourself, but you cannot control how your mind is going to react to something. It is part of your body, and if you get ill, you get ill, and we need to be there for one another. So I thought today's video we would talk about mental health.
And I didn't tell anyone because I was too scared about what they'd say. And I know deep down there was nothing they could do to take it away. It was my fight to fight and my battle to face. I remember that house I grew up in and how those demons would rattle that place. I'd lay awake at night just staring at the ceiling. I've spent my whole life trying to run from that feeling of being lonely, that feeling of being lost, that feeling of being sick when the lights turn off, that feeling of being depressed, that feeling of being anxious, that feeling of screaming to God, begging him to take this, only to get silence in return.
I don't even think that it should be Mental Health Week. I think it's a fantastic thing that we have Mental Health Week, but I find it unbelievable that we have to have a week to talk about mental health when mental health should be part of every week, of every day. Our friends, our colleagues, our families. I suppose as a society we've come very far, but I still find it incredible that we have to have a week that tells us to talk about, to deliver, to think about, to consider people's mental health. When if we love one another and we respect one another and we want the best for one another, mental health is a huge part of that, and particularly where we're all locked in our homes, it becomes an even bigger part. So I thought I would share some numbers. So this is in the UK right now. 1 in 4 people this year will suffer with some form of mental health illness of a greater or lesser degree. 1 in 4. 25% of us will experience some kind of mental health issue or distress. 2.5 people out of every 100 have some form of phobia. 5.9 or 6 people out of every 100 will have a generalised anxiety disorder this year. 3.3 people out of every 100 in the UK this year will suffer from depression. 0.5 of every 100 people will have a panic disorder problem this year. 4.4 people in every 100 will have post-traumatic stress illness this year. And just under 8 people in every 100 will have an anxiety and depression disorder together. So all those facts doesn't even take into account psychotic disorders, bipolar, borderline personality disorder, and antisocial personality disorder. This is where for me it gets even more frightening. Just over 20 in every 100 people this year in the UK will have suicidal thoughts. Think about that. 20 people out of every 100 will have suicidal thoughts this year. Just under 7 people out of every 100 this year will attempt suicide. And 7.3 in every 100 people in the UK this year will self-harm. So I think when you take into account all of those numbers, the fact that it is Mental Health Week, we need to contextualise what mental health is important.
I lay in that bed crying and I toss and I turn, and I turn and I toss to this day. The doctor gave me medication, the pastor said pray. I tried both and this anxiety still hasn't gone away. So forgive me if I fantasize about being gone today. I'm an actor who got really good at being on today, but when I turn off I go right back into the shadows. I'm in the deep end now, but I started in the shallows, and I might just drown myself in these waves. Suburban hell,
So as I said earlier in the video, the greatest minds in their field, or the most talented people, the people who you think have it all, even they're affected, because it doesn't discriminate.
And I don't think I'll ever get out of this valley I'm in. Terrified that all along God has tallied my sins. And if he has, the number must be astronomical. My life is a joke and you keep reading just past the comic. Because everything you think that I am is far from the truth. I wish I could open up to you and just let loose. But my vocal cords get tight when the devil pulls on this noose. And then I'm back to keeping everything bottled up inside. But he's not gonna keep me from pulling the throttle back this time. He's not gonna keep me trapped like this. I can't get out of bed, I was never made to act like this. I'm packing up my bags and he can't stop me from running fast like this. I'm not gonna be a slave to these voices of anxiety. I'm shoving the devil back for every time that he lied to me. And I'm taking a belt to these demons who whisper despair in my ear. And I'm ignoring every naysayer who stands and stares when I'm near. I'm moving forward out of this slump. I took my bruises, I took my lumps. I fell down but I got right back up. So give me a torch and let's light that up.
So what does all this mean? It means we carry on. We support one another. We love one another. We are there for one another. But as was what happened unfortunately with Caroline Flack that hit the news, is someone that seemingly had it all together and had it all, was suffering so heavily, and then we started the Be Kind movement. That's all we can ask, is be kind, be open, be ready to listen, and be ready to love one another and embrace us for all that we are, because actually we're all going to need someone at some point in our lives. So now is the time to start being a little bit more open and a little bit more caring and a little bit more realistic with where we are in our own lives, because through social media we can present this perfect life, but life is life. Some days it's properly shit and other days it's great. And that's very similar to people with mental health conditions.
The devil and I'm dousing these demons in gasoline. Look at you now. Now you're not laughing at me. Now who's the one who's being tortured and punked? Now who's the one closing every door that I want? Now who's the one watching the other burn to the ground? Don't look away from me. You better turn back around. I'm not done talking to you now. I'm watching your moves. I'm on your back and I'm stalking you too. And when you try to ruin some other kid's life, I'll be stopping you too. You took 30 years of my life and I can't get that back. You told me to end my life and I nearly got killed for that. You took me down but I bounced right back. I was lost then and I got found like that. And everything you told me I wasn't, someone new told me I was. And everything you hated in me, someone new told me he loved.
Some of the closest people to me in my life have suffered with it, and I've seen the damaging effect it's had on them. But as someone that's been through some traumatic stuff, and I've been diagnosed with a PTSD, again, I get it. It's not easy to talk about. It's very difficult subject matter. It's going to a place that you've deliberately shut off. It's a time to open the floodgates a little bit, I think. And if you know someone, just reach out. Just check they're okay. Even more important in the current climate, when you're isolated and you're alone, and if you are predisposed to a mental health illness or you're going through a tough time, be there for one another. Be kind, be supportive, be loving, but be there. And that's all I wanted to say for today. So as always, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
And when you tried to kill me with depression and anxiety, he reached in and placed hope deep inside of me. So I'm done listening to you and letting you control me. I'm announcing it now that the devil can't hold me. I'm walking away from the old me, and I'm demanding a refund on every lie that you sold me. You knew I'd find a way out sooner or later, and I found my escape in the form of a savior.